Please like and subscribe. Chapter 7. Deep within the Yondame's seal, the Kyuubi let out a low growl. The terrible demon was both enraged and amused by the stunt that Temari had pulled. On the one hand, it was insulting to think that a mere mortal could get the better of his container. But on the other hand, it showed that the boy had gained good taste in women. Naruto would need a good mate to bear strong kits in the future, and Temari was definitely worth considering. However, Naruto's love life didn't strike the Kyuubi as anything important. The Kyuubi had no love for Naruto. In fact, he downright hated the boy. To the Kyuubi, Naruto and other Jinchuriki were the ultimate expression of the unnatural. Demons were the pinnacle of life, rivaling even the kami who created them. After all, the Biju existed as pure thought and energy. They weren't bound to the physical world or mortality like animals. Even humans, who were the closest creature to demons, were inferior because of their frail bodies and short lifespan. Jinchuriki were by their very nature an abomination. How dare mere mortals try to contain and control demons? It went completely against the natural order of the universe. What these humans wanted only mattered as long as the demons were willing to allow. Did humans really think that they could usurp the Biju's place in the universe by simply locking them away in mortals? This situation was only more intolerable because many mortals dared to presume that the Jinchuriki were actually the demons they contained. Jinchuriki never were and never could become demons. All they would ever be are pale mockeries of Biju. Nevertheless, the Kyuubi couldn't help feeling a speck of respect for his jailer. The brat put up with the stupidity of his fellow humans and didn't let their pathetic views of the world stop him. Such a feat wouldn't be very impressive if a demon did it, since demons knew that they would long outlive the pathetic taunting of mortals. However, it was impressive that a mere mortal was able to withstand the taunting. Very rarely did a mortal possess willpower that could be compared to a demon's. The fact that Naruto had never attempted to draw on the Kitsune's power was another point in the brat's favor. Humans, as a whole, were greedy creatures who would rather steal power than earn it. Obviously, the brat had gained a few demonic traits and sense if he was able to turn out like he did. So to review, the brat was out cold thanks to the vixen, and his precious village was probably going to be attacked. This left the Kyuubi at a bit of a crossroads. It was within his power to direct his chakra at the seal that was keeping Naruto out. If this occurred, the demonic energy would burn away the seal fairly quickly. Only seals specially prepared for use against demons and Jinchuriki were able to withstand the corrosive effects of demonic chakra. Naruto would then quickly recover and probably go defend the village if it was under attack. Did the Kyuubi really want that to happen? A fierce debate warred within the Kitsune as he thought about what he should do. On the one hand, it would be a good prank to play on the brat, and the Kyuubi could always enjoy a well-thought-out prank. Also, the idea of someone messing with Konoha before he got a chance to wreck the place was a good motivator. At the same time, the Kyuubi didn't want to be seen as caring about the brat or the brat's village. Also, it was about time that those insolent villagers redeemed their one-way tickets to hell. In the end, the Kyuubi grudgingly decided to get rid of the stasis seal. Ever so slowly and carefully, the great demon directed the particles of his chakra towards the seal to burn it away. The demon had to concentrate because it was almost impossible to control his chakra once the Yondame seal filtered the chakra. There was the possibility of flooding the brat with chakra to rapidly burn away the seal, but the Kyuubi couldn't do that. First off, only the brat could control how much chakra the seal filtered. Secondly, that would break the agreement with Naruto, and the Kyuubi would never break his word. Jiraiya stood in the shadows of one of Konoha's stadium access rows and calmly looked down at the stadium's arena. Currently, the finalists were being shown to the audience and announced. This Chunin exam was a relatively small affair with only 6 finalists. Of those 6, only Lee and Tenten were representing Konoha. Suna had 2 finalists in the forms of Temari and Gaara. Kankuro had been taken out by Tenten in the preliminary rounds last month. One of the remaining finalists came from Taki and the other came from Corsa. The first round of the exams was between Lee and Temari. Jiraiya didn't pay any attention to the match because it wasn't important. Those kids were fighting for the judges, and for the crowd. The Toad Sage was concerned about the upcoming invasion. Orochimaru would have to strike either during the exams or immediately after the tournament. Anything else wouldn't satisfy the snake's ego. Originally, Jiraiya had wanted to be by Sarutobi's side so that he could cover his teacher's back. The fact that his presence would unnerve many Suna ninja who undoubtedly were working with Orochimaru was another reason. However, Sarutobi had insisted that Jiraiya remain hidden. Not many people knew that the super pervert was in Konoha, and Sarutobi fully intended to capitalize on that fact. Jiraiya had to admit that having him leaping to the rescue as soon as the fighting started would be a bigger moral booster to Konoha ninjas than announcing his presence beforehand. Down below in the arena, the first match did not last very long. Temari's training with Naruto all month had given her plenty of practice. Was definitely better than Naruto at taijutsu. However, Lee's style was better known, and Lee didn't mix up the Iron Fist's forms or add in moves from other styles. This meant that Lee was effectively telegraphing his moves to Temari. The fact that he was still wearing his weights since Guy hadn't told him to take them off wasn't helping the younger green beast of Konoha. In the end, Temari was able to set Lee up and pound him into La La Land with her battle fan. As Lee was being carried to the nurse's station, a thought hit Jiraiya. Where was Naruto? Team 7, like all the other Genin teams, didn't have a mission today, so why wasn't the boy in the stadium? There was absolutely no way in the elemental countries that Naruto would miss the matches. Jiraiya knew that his grandson would at least want to watch Temari fight. Sarutobi had let his super pervert of a student watch Naruto and Temari spar through the old Hokage's viewing crystal. It was obvious to any onlooker that Naruto had developed a major crush on the Suna ninja. Suddenly, a chill ran down Jiraiya's spine as he realized something. Temari had also shown a great deal of interest in Naruto during the duo's spars. Suna was working with Orochimaru to attack the village. The Kazekage must have told his children about the invasion so that they were caught off guard deep in enemy territory. Also, Temari had a strong personality and seemed to go after what she wanted with a determination that bordered on the ruthless. What if she had captured Naruto before the finals? Such a thing wasn't as absurd as it might at first seem. The Kazekage's daughter's training was obviously in the Wind Mistress tradition. That particular group of women existed as an order before the creation of ninja villages, and they were infamously known for capturing enemy men who caught their fancy. In fact, Suna, although it wasn't mentioned in polite company, still kept a form of that tradition by allowing their shinobi to claim one enemy ninja they personally captured as a sabane, aka a seized mate. This did not bode well at all. If Orochimaru won, then Naruto would end up prisoner in Suna or a lab rat in Oto. If Orochimaru lost, then his enemies in the village could potentially bring him up on charges of desertion of duty and collusion with the enemy. Whether those charges were true or not wouldn't matter if those bitter old has-beens formed a big enough mob. Jiraiya would rather be damned than see his godson face any of those possibilities. But what was Jiraiya to do? It wasn't like he could just leave the stadium and go looking for Naruto. The Toad Sage started to panic a bit before he smacked himself in the face. He then quickly summoned Gamakichi and said, "Okay Kichi, I've got a very important mission for you. I need you to find Naruto and tell him that Konoha is going to be invaded soon. After that, tell him to summon one or more of the major Battletoads to help defend the village. However, you need to tell him to not summon your father. I'll summon Bunta to help out over here if things start to go south." Gamakichi was normally a sarcastic kid, especially whenever Jiraiya got involved. However, he instantly caught on to the seriousness in Jiraiya's voice, and the young toad knew that now was not the time for wise remarks. The little orange toad simply nodded his head and started hopping in the direction that he sensed Naruto was in. All summons shared a bond with their clan summoners and could use that bond to locate a particular summoner whenever they wanted to. Jiraiya glanced in the direction Gamakichi had taken off in, and he somberly said, "Please be safe, Naruto. I could never forgive myself or face Minato if something awful happened to you." With that said, the Toad Sage directed his attention back to the area and started looking for the start of the invasion. Hidden under the Kazekage's robes, Orochimaru looked down at the finals with barely contained glee. Everything was going exactly as the snake Sannin had planned. The vengeance that he had been craving all these years was about to be satisfied. Sarutobi would regret taking away the position of Hokage that he deserved and giving it to that damned Namikaze. Orochimaru's beloved teacher would watch as his precious Konoha was destroyed, and then the old man would die. The Chunin finals themselves proceeded in an adequate manner. After Temari and Lee's match, Tenten faced off against the Taiki ninja. Tenten quickly and decisively showed why you did not want to dismiss Weapons Mistress because she's a girl. That poor dumb fool would never be contaminating the gene pool thanks to Tenten's aim. Unfortunately for said ninja, Konoha's rising Weapons Mistress hadn't delivered any fatal blows. A 10-minute recess was called by the referee as the newly made eunuch was carried off of the field. During the break, Orochimaru glanced to his left and gave a subtle nod. Kabuto now knew that everything was set and that he was to launch the signal to attack as soon as Gaara's match started. The snake Sannin then spent the rest of the break casually talking with his old teacher to keep any suspicions at bay. Soon enough, Gaara's match was called and the invasion signal was launched. The Sound Four immediately threw off their disguises and disposed of the Hokage's elite guard. At the same time, Orochimaru grabbed Sarutobi and held a knife to the old man's throat. Down in the area, Oto and Suna infiltrators jumped out the crowds and started their assault. A small smirk crossed Orochimaru's lips as he looked at a textbook example of a surprise invasion going off flawlessly. However, reality quickly showed that textbook examples don't happen in real life for a reason. The bodies of Sarutobi's dead guards quickly fell apart, revealing that they were only mud clones. Orochimaru froze for a second when saw this and realized that Konoha knew about the invasion. Sarutobi quickly capitalized on this momentary freeze to escape from Orochimaru's grip. The Sound Four shifted almost instantly to Plan B and used the barrier jutsu they had been taught to keep the Hokage from escaping. This move by the Sound Four wasn't needed because Sarutobi had no intention of running from his former student. Sarutobi threw off his Kage robes to reveal that he was in full battle armor, and then he started taunting Orochimaru. Did you really think that I'm so senile I wouldn't figure out that there was a snake hiding in the grass? You may be able to mimic a man's voice, Orochimaru, but you'll never be able to mimic his mind. Remember to be aware of all the little facts that a person has given out next time you try disguising yourself as someone else. Orochimaru tore off the Kage robes he was wearing and the Yondaime Kazekage's face. He then sneered at Sarutobi and said, "Your advice isn't needed, teacher. While you may have discovered my little invasion, it will all be for nothing. Konoha will burn around you and you will die." A wicked grin broke out on Orochimaru's face as he continued on. "I think that it's time I bring a few special guests to witness the destruction of Konoha. Resurrection to the impure world, first." A dark purple vortex appeared and a golden casket appeared. Orochimaru followed this by shouting out second and fourth. Sarutobi's immediate reaction when he heard Orochimaru shout out fourth was to try and cancel the jutsu. However, the old Hokage kept his emotions in check and allowed the third casket to appear. Both ninjas had read the dark scroll detailing the resurrection to the impure world jutsu, but Orochimaru had obviously failed to do his homework. The Yondaime's soul belonged to the Shinigami, and the Death God would not allow anyone to steal his property. Black lighting immediately encased the Yondaime's casket as soon as it was fully summoned. This lighting quickly struck the other two caskets, encasing them in black lighting as well. Orochimaru looked on in shock as area around the three caskets was distorted and warped. Suddenly, there was a flash of light and all three caskets vanished. Almost immediately, Orochimaru let out a scream of rage and he shouted out, "What happened?" The old Hokage started to chuckle and he said, "You're such fool, Orochimaru. Did you really think that you could just steal from the gods? You should be grateful that the Shinigami didn't just claim your soul for this offense. But don't worry, I plan to send you to him so that you can be held accountable for your sins." Orochimaru quickly summoned his Kusanagi and prepared to face his old teacher. The failure of the resurrection jutsu quickly forgotten as rage filled the ex-Konoha shinobi's heart. All that mattered to Orochimaru now was wiping that grin off of Sarutobi's face. Gamakichi raced through Konoha's underbrush tracking Naruto down. Finally, the small toad's legs lead him to the clearing where Tamari had hidden the blonde boy. The toad arrived just in time to see enough of the stasis seal burn before it was burnt away to recognize it. Gamakichi quickly hopped onto Naruto's face and shouted out, "Wake up, sleepyhead! Konoha is about to be attacked." Naruto woke up almost instantly after hearing that Konoha was under attack, and he immediately got into a defensive position. The blonde ninja quickly spotted Gamakichi righting himself up and asked his friend, "Gamakichi? Who's attacking?" The young toad looked up and replied, "Oto and Suna are attacking Konoha. Jiraiya told me to find you and tell you to summon a big toad to help fight. You can summon any toad you want except for Pops. The old pervert wants to keep Pops in reserve if he needs him." For a split second, Naruto froze when he heard that Suna was attacking the village, and he wished that Gamakichi had been misinformed. However, his mind immediately turned to that last spar with Tamari. Her eyes seemed to have held a sadness in them that had never been there before. That sadness in Tamari's eyes, even more than being knocked out after kissing her, that convinced Naruto that his little friend was telling him the truth. Now the only question on Naruto's mind was which toad to take into battle. The top three heavy hitters of the Toad clan were currently Gamabunta, Gamaken, and Gamahiro. With Gamabunta reserved by Jiraiya, Naruto had to choose between Gamaken and Gamahiro. So would a forked club and shield or twin swords be more useful? In a few seconds Naruto made up his mind and he summoned a shadow clone. He then bit his thumb and smeared the blood on the clone's hand. Both Narutos quickly put some distance between them and then summoned the two Battletoads. Gamaken appeared under the shadow clone and bewilderedly said, "Oh, where am I? What's going on?" The clone quickly replied, "Focus Gamaken, focus. You're near Konoha and I need your help to fight off an invasion. Everyone who isn't a member of Konoha is to be treated as an enemy." The slightly slow-witted toad nodded his head to show that he understood. Over to the right, the original Naruto was standing on Gamahiro's head and he said, "Okay Gamahiro. I know we've only met once before and I haven't really proven that I can work with the big three, but I really need your help. Konoha is being invaded, so could you please help me out?" The Silent Swords toad nodded his head to show that he would help out. Hidden in the brush, Gamakichi watched as Naruto and his uncles left to come to the village's defense. For a split second, the little toad felt jealous of Naruto since the blonde was able to go off and fight. However, Gamakichi knew that right now he would just get in the way. The young toad bowed his head and said, "Good luck, bro. I know you'll need it." With that said, Gamabunta's son disappeared back to Myoboko Mountain. Meanwhile, Naruto directed Gamahiro towards Konoha's wall since that would be the most likely spot to find invaders. His hunch quickly came through as the duo spotted two giant snakes slithering through a collapsed section of the village wall. Gamahiro quickly leaped into the air and pulled out his two swords. The giant toad then sliced both snakes in half before he put his swords back in their scabbards and landed on the snake's caresses. Practically everyone within visual range of Gamahiro stopped in their tracks. Most of the Konoha ninja hadn't seen one of the legendary toad summons before, and the invaders were shocked to see two of their summons so effortlessly defeated. Naruto was the only ninja not stunned by Gamahiro's deed, and he quickly created several dozen shadow clones. Those clones launched themselves off of the Battletoad and engaged the enemy ground troops, hoping to use the enemy's shock to their advantage. Most of the enemy ninjas were able to defend themselves against the clone onslaught, but several were killed before they could defend themselves. Ibiki Marino was one of the defenders on the wall watching Naruto fight. It was both awe-inspiring and a little humbling to witness a genin working such a powerful summon. Unlike his companions, Ibiki was about to bring his mind back to present and he shouted out, "In case you people haven't noticed, there's an invasion going on. Do any of you guys want to face your sweethearts tonight knowing that some wet-behind-the-ears kid killed more invaders than you did?" That quickly snapped the rest of the defenders out of their stupor and they directed their efforts to repelling the invasion force. It didn't take Naruto and Gamahiro long to plow through the Oto contingent attacking this particular section of wall. Naruto turned to face his fellow ninjas on the wall and he shouted out, "I'm going to see if there are any other summons that need to be taken care of." Ibiki nodded his head, showing that he had heard Naruto, and mentally made a note to report the boy's exemplary assistance in a report with his own recommendations. Temari looked around the arena and wondered how everything had become so crazy. Currently, the Wind Mistress was standing next to the Wind Daimyo, acting as a bodyguard for him and his frightened wife. She had spotted the ruler of Wind Country cowering in his box seat and had been shocked to see that there weren't any guards by the daimyo. This didn't make any sense. Why had the daimyo been left out in the open? If he died, then any hope her father might have of improving Suna's business flew out the window. Therefore, Temari had abandoned her previously given assignment of randomly killing Konoha villagers in the crowd for a self-imposed assignment of protection. In the back of her mind, she wondered what this would result in once this whole mess settled. On the one hand, abandoning an assignment was a very serious offense. But at the same time, only a brain-dead moron would fail to see the importance of Suna staying in the Wind Daimyo's good graces. Hopefully, any future board of inquiry would take this into consideration. While Temari was busy deflecting stray kunai, Jiraiya jumped into the arena and approached Gaara. The Toad Sage knew that his opponent was a Jinchuriki and that things would spiral out of control if the boy brought the demon's power to bear. Luckily, Jiraiya had known about Gaara's condition for weeks in advance and had planned accordingly. The old ninja shrugged his shoulders and said, "Look kid, just give up. You're 40 years too young to think of beating me." Just like Jiraiya had been hoping, Gaara became enraged by the taunt and shouted out, I'll kill you and feed your blood to mother." The Suna Jinchuriki quickly followed up on his promise by sending a blast of sand towards Jiraiya. However, Jiraiya easily leaped out of the way of the attack and quickly gave another taunt. This process was repeated several times, with Gaara becoming increasingly more enraged every time the old Sannin got away. As paradoxical as it sounded, Jiraiya needed Gaara to let loose more of the demon's power in order to beat the boy. The only seals that Jiraiya had for dealing with a Jinchuriki were ones that he had designed to knock Naruto out if his godson ever had trouble controlling the Kyuubi. This meant that the seals required a certain amount of demonic chakra to be flowing through a person before they would work. So Jiraiya thus got the fun job of playing bullfighter with Gaara. After a few tense and fast-paced minutes, Gaara started to show signs that the required amount of demonic chakra was pulsing through him. The Suna ninja's sand armor was starting to take on Shikaku's appearance and his eyes were looking more like those of a wild beast. Jiraiya knew that was the time to strike and he whipped out the prepared seal and made a mad dash to Gaara. Thanks to foresight in positioning, Jiraiya was able to slip under Gaara's main defense and slam the seal on his forehead. Almost instantly, Gaara froze up as the seal went to work and he quickly collapsed on the field. Up on the daimyo's box, Temari watched with trepidation as Gaara was bound up and a Chunin carried him away. It was obvious to Temari that her father's insane plan had failed. She then turned to the Wind Daimyo and said, "For your safety, sir, I suggest that you turn yourself over to Konoha's forces. I'll accompany you to the nearest Konoha forces for your protection." The Wind Daimyo gave Temari a curt nod and the young Wind Mistress led the noble couple to where there was a group of Konoha ninjas. Konohamaru, his two friends, and a few classmates were running through the streets as fast as their little legs could carry them. Up until a few minutes ago they had been safely hiding in one of the underground bunkers. However, the enemy had somehow discovered the bunker's location. Iruka had frantically ordered everyone to leave the bunker while he and the other teachers stayed behind to delay the enemy ninjas. None of the kids had any idea of where to go and were simply running in random directions. Udon quickly spotted a half-collapsed wall with a lot of surrounding debris. There were several nooks and crannies in the debris that the Konohamaru Corps could hide in. The young mathematician quickly pulled on Konohamaru and Miyogi's arms. Both kids quickly caught on to what Udon was trying to tell them and all three dived into the rubble. It was a good thing that the trio had hidden themselves in the rubble because a few seconds later their classmates started dropping like flies. Someone on a nearby rooftop was targeting the Munchkins with kunai. Konohamaru was permanently scarred mentally when he saw one of his playmates die before his eyes with a kunai logged in his head. This scene of carnage became all the more gruesome and horrifying to the trio when they learned the identity of the killer. Sasuke Uchiha hopped down and pulled out his kunai from one of the fallen children. His Sharingan was blazing as he looked on the sight of his handiwork with satisfaction. Orochimaru had recently revealed to Sasuke that Konoha had ordered the destruction of the Uchiha clan and Sasuke was thirsting for revenge. The village had taken his family from him, turned his brother against the clan, and had even tried to rob him of his dignity as an Uchiha. Miyogi was so frightened by everything that she let out a small leap. Sasuke immediately honed in on that sound and spotted the Konohamaru core hiding in the rubble. He quickly focused on Konohamaru and gave a very sinister smile. Perhaps it was time he showed the old Hokage just what it felt like to have your family taken from you. The Rouge Uchiha pulled out a kunai and threw it at the Sandame's grandson, who was like a duck in a barrel because of his hiding spot. Just as the kunai was about to hit Konohamaru, the ground shook and a great cloud of smoke went up. This smoke cloud was quickly accompanied by the distinctive sound of metal striking metal. A small gust blew, helping to clear away the smoke to reveal Gameken standing near the rubble with his shield protectively covering the trio. Chapter 8. The shadow clone Naruto stared at Sasuke in shock, horror, and rage. Why was Sasuke attacking Konoha citizens? It just didn't make any sense. There was absolutely no reason that could justify Sasuke attacking the academy students. A blazing rage quickly overpowered Naruto's shock and horror. Sasuke's actions were a betrayal of the vilest kind, and one of the few things Naruto couldn't stand was betrayal. It was because of the villagers betraying the Yandame's trust that he had such a rotten life. Naruto's rage became so great that he roared out, "Kill him, Gameken! We have to make sure that the Uchiha doesn't leave here alive." Gameken nodded his head and replied, "With pleasure, Naruto." Usually Gameken, like most toads, was a rather laid-back and easygoing kind of guy. However, the battle toad hated oathbreakers and child killers. Since Sasuke was both, Gameken wanted to split him down the middle and roast him alive. As Sasuke stared up at Naruto and Gameken, a small part of his revenge-obsessed mind started to wonder if he had bitten off a little more than he could chew. The Uchiha Avenger could remember his father grudgingly complimenting the toad summons for their abilities in battle. That meant that they had to be good fighters, and it looked like one of the toad's heavy hitters was out for his blood. Also, a minuscule fraction of Sasuke's mind was worried about Naruto. What other tricks was the loser hiding if he could summon? Konohamaru and the other two munchkins had front row seats for the cash of former teammates. Sasuke immediately sent off a volley of shuriken and launched a fireball at Naruto. However, Gameken immediately blocked both attacks with his shield and quickly brought his forked club to bear. Sasuke managed to dodge the club, but he wasn't prepared for Naruto to use the Shadow Clone Kunai Jutsu. The traitor tried to twist out of the way of the kunai. Unfortunately for Sasuke, two of the kunai hit him. One of the kunai pierced his shoulder and the other grazed his side. The unexpected pain from Naruto's attack caused Sasuke to freeze. This just made things worse for the Uchiha because it caused him Lanron. Konohamaru, Naruto, and the others all heard a sickening snap as Sasuke's left ankle and knee broke from the landing. Sasuke let out a hiss and then he started screaming, "How dare you do this, dope? I must have my vengeance. This damn village needs to be destroyed for what it's done to the Uchiha clan." Sasuke's rants caused something within Naruto to snap and he shouted back, "What the hell's going through your brain, Sasuke? This village has never done anything to the Uchiha clan. Hell, the villagers practically kiss your ass. Don't blame the village for you turning traitor. I don't remember the exact line in the code, but you've committed first-rate treason and that means that you need to be executed. Gameken, would you please take care of this?" Gameken muttered, "Sure, Naruto. This scum needs to be put down." With that said, Gameken brought his club down on Sasuke's head. The great Battletoad then pulled his club off of the traitor and spat a glob of oil. Gameken then looked up at Naruto and said, "Hey Naruto, could you lend me a match?" Naruto nodded his head and replied, "Okay Gameken." Quickly going through the necessary seals, Naruto used the fire style, Grand Fireball Jutsu in an ironic twist to burn Sasuke's body. Once the traitor's body was burning, Naruto said, "Hey Gameken, could you please guard Konohamaru and his friends? I'm almost out of chakra and the boss needs to know what happened." Gameken nodded his head and replied, "Don't worry kiddo. I'll guard these tadpoles." That was all that the clone needed to hear before he cancelled himself. Gamaken turned to Konohamaru and said, "Come out of there, kids. I won't break my word to Naruto, even if it was just to his clone." Konohamaru quickly looked at his friends before crawling out of his hiding spot. After all, the toad had to be a good guy if he was with boss. Orochimaru did not like how his fight with Sarutobi was going. The resurrection to the impure world had used up a lot of chakra, a lot more chakra than Orochimaru had been expecting. Also, Sarutobi was constantly reminding the snake trader why he had wanted to summon the pervious Kages. The Sandaime was old, but he was still a master ninja that deserved to be treated with caution by his enemies. Thus, Orochimaru was trapped inside the barrier having to deal with Sarutobi's giant bag of tricks. It was rather ironic that the prison that Orochimaru had created for his old teacher now held him. There were no reinforcements for the snake Sandaime. Each of the Sound Four was hard at work trying to maintain the barrier because there were 4 squads of ANBUs standing next to barrier ready to kill them. Sarutobi calmly held Enma in staff form as he stared out at Orochimaru in between dogging attacks and noticed the sweat running down his former student's face. A bitter smile crossed the old Hokage's face as he thought about his battle with Orochimaru so far. Like all of the Sannin, Orochimaru had a major flaw, and his was his desire for flashing and unique jutsus. Also, there was the fact that the snake trader loved to fight in a very aggressive manner. Sarutobi had tried for years to teach the boy to go for the simpler things and be a bit more defensive. Now, he was using those age-old flaws to defeat his former student. This student-slash-teacher grudge match got an unexpected interruption when Sasuke died. Orochimaru's cursed mark created a bond between him and those he marked. That was how the snake Sannin was able to influence anyone, except Anko, who hated him with every fiber in her being, who was marked to follow him. However, most people don't know that the bond meant that Orochimaru was partially tied to his marked minion's life forces. This aspect of the bond only settled if someone had survived the marking process, and Orochimaru used the anchoring effect to help possess his host bodies. Thus, Orochimaru never bothered to eradicate that flaw and was unexpectedly hit by the backlash of the Uchiha's death. Sarutobi didn't know about this weakness in the cursed seal. All he knew was that Orochimaru suddenly froze in place and that this was too good of an opportunity to miss. The old Hokage put all his energy into a powerful forward thrust with the Enma staff and hit Orochimaru square into the chest. Caught off guard, Orochimaru wasn't able to recover from the blow and was sent flying into the barrier. The Sound Four watched in horror as their leader and master physically died from the jutsu he had taught them. Without their leader, the Sound Four were completely lost. Almost as one, they dropped the barrier and allowed themselves to be captured by the surrounding ANBU. Sarutobi calmly desummoned Enma and said, "Secure them and place them in a high-security cell. However, I don't want them harmed until we can interrogate them." The ANBU quickly and quietly followed instructions while Sarutobi moved to check on the defenses of Konoha. The attempted invasion of Konoha had failed. Temari knew that because she wouldn't be stuck in a Konoha jail cell if Suna and Oto had somehow managed to rally themselves against Konoha's defenses. Temari let out a small laugh. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on her. Just 3 days ago she had been so sure of victory that she had drugged Naruto to keep him safe. Now, she was here enjoying Konoha's finest detention centers. Sure, she was in the VIP set of prison cells because of her father and the fact that she had surrendered. However, a prison cell was a prison cell no matter how you sliced it. Temari flopped back onto her bed and her mind drifted to Naruto. If it wasn't so pathetic, it would be hilarious. Here she was a prisoner in Konoha after a failed invasion, and all she could think about was Naruto. What was it about the boy that ensnared her thoughts? She should be thinking about the safety of Suna, wondering about what was going to happen to her, or worried about her family. And yet, all she could think about was whether or not Naruto would like her after the invasion and her stunt. Suddenly, the door into cell block opened and a leaf ninja walked in. The ninja walked up to Temari's cell and unlocked it. He then looked at the wind mistress and said, "Follow me, Suna ninja. The Hokage wants to talk to you." Don't try to escape or I'll kill you. Temari quickly got up and followed her escort out of the cell block. She was then led to the Hokage's office and directed inside. Inside the office, Sarutobi and Jiraiya were waiting for Temari. Sarutobi was still wearing his Kage robe, signaling that he hadn't transferred authority over to Jiraiya yet. The Sandaime looked up at Temari and said, "Greetings, Temari of the Sand. Please, sit down." Temari quickly decided to follow the Hokage's directions. Once she was sitting down, the Wind Mistress's curiosity caused her to speak up. "Why was I taken from my cell? Don't get me wrong, I'm glad to be out of the cell. However, it's rather unprecedented for a ninja to be released prior to a peace settlement, and I doubt that one's been hammered out this quickly." Sarutobi's face remained neutral, but inside he was smirking. Trust in Namikaze to find a kunoichi with brains as well as power and beauty. This Sandaime then spoke in his usual grandfatherly-like manner. "You are correct. Normally, you could look forward to at least a month in our jails while Suna and Konoha try to hammer out a peace treaty. However, the Wind Daimyo was impressed by your actions and asked a favor of the Fire Daimyo. The Fire Daimyo informed me of this earlier today, and so, you are being released from your cell." It was a good thing that Temari was already sitting down because she felt her legs lose all their strength. Being released before a peace agreement was a practically unheard of. Temari's eyes narrowed slightly as she started to get over her shock. She then calmly said, "What's the deal? I seriously doubt that you would just let me walk out of Konoha even with the daimyo's request." A small twinkle appeared in Sarutobi's eyes as he replied, "Very good deduction, Temari. I can't just let you return to Suna even though we're in the middle of peace negotiations. However, I can give you a partial parole. You will be allowed out of your cell, but you will not be allowed to leave the village gates. Also, you will not be allowed to wield a weapon or practice any of the ninja arts until the peace treaty is signed. If you agree to these restrictions, I will release you and have one of my ninjas look after you. After all, you will need a place to stay and I don't want an angry villager trying to take their frustrations out on you. Do you agree, Temari?" This was a very tough choice. A part of Temari longed to be able to walk around outside again. She hated being confined indoors. However, the thought of being unable to practice and being stuck in the village also stunk. If she accepted this deal, she would simply be trading her jail cell as a prison for Konoha as a prison. Finally, after several minutes of deep thought, Temari looked up at Sarutobi and said, "All right. I agree to your terms, sir." Sarutobi nodded his head and said, "Very well, Temari of the Sand. As of this moment, the conditions of your parole are in effect. Jiraiya, please go and get our first choice of parole officer for Temari." The Toad Sannin had a knowing grin on his face as he left the room. Temari was confused by Jiraiya's grin, and then her confusion grew into horror as Jiraiya returned with a slightly confused Naruto. Sarutobi then calmly said, "Good day, Naruto. Due to a request by the Fire Daimyo, Miss Temari here is to be paroled and allowed into the village provided that she follows a few simple rules that I've discussed with her. Since you already know her, I want you to act as her parole officer." Naruto was stunned to find himself as Temari's parole officer. In all honesty, he was still trying to sort out how he felt about their last meeting. The fact that she had drugged him really bothered Naruto. At the same time he remembered, or thought he remembered, hearing her say that the kiss was real. Nevertheless, Naruto accepted his assignment and was handed a list of what Temari's parole entailed. He then calmly led Temari always from the Hokage Tower. As Naruto led Temari around Konoha, she was given dirty looks by almost every civilian crossing her path. Most people recognized her as a Suna ninja from the exams. Thus, she was a perfect target for most people's frustration and rage over the attack. Naruto saw the anger being directed at his charge and quickly started leading her away from the populated areas of the village. He wasn't about to subject anyone to the blind anger that he had suffered as a child. Naruto quickly decided to lead the duo to a quiet meadow near his apartment. Once they were alone, Naruto turned to face Temari and he asked, "Why? Why did you do that to me, Temari? I'll look after you and see that you're taken care of like the old man asked me to, no matter what you tell me." I just want to know. The look on Naruto's face and his genuine manner as he asked was simply too much for Temari. She started crying and nearly shouted out, because I love you, Naruto. Temari then continued on in a quieter manner with her eyes closed. I love you, Naruto, and I didn't want to lose you in the invasion. By knocking you out, I was hoping to keep you out of the invasion and be able to bring you back with me to Suna. To Temari's utter surprise, she felt Naruto hug her and whisper, don't cry, Temari. You did what you did because you wanted to protect me, and I forgive you. I may not know how I feel about you and I or what may happen in the future, but I won't let this get between our friendship. For the first time since her surrender, Temari started to feel like something was going right for her. It was a week after the invasion that the citizens of Konoha were gathered in the main square. Everyone watched as Sarutobi and Jiraiya walked out onto the balcony above the square. Sarutobi called out to the assembled crowd, good day, my dear fellow visitors. Today is a day of sorrow and joy. It has reached my ears that many people are curious about where Sasuke Uchiha is. Unfortunately, the last Uchiha turned traitor and had to be killed. He was disposed of after one of Konoha's loyal ninjas found him killing academy students. The assembled crowd started murmuring amongst themselves in shock. How could this be? Many asked their neighbors. It was just inconceivable to them that the last Uchiha, the one so many had placed their hopes for the future on, could turn traitor. Sarutobi quickly decided that it was best to destroy the people's view of the Uchiha clan by revealing the truth. He then called out, what makes Sasuke's actions so disgusting is the fact that he followed in the footsteps of his clan. I will now reveal a secret that this village has kept for the past 6 years. The Uchiha massacre was not the actions of a madman, but a village-sanctioned operation. The Uchihas were preparing to launch a coup to take over the village, and all attempts to negotiate with them had failed. If this coup happened, the village would have been weakened enough that other villages would have declared war on us. Itachi Uchiha volunteered to stop his clan from their plan and was sadly forced to slay his clansmen. Stunned silence was all that came from the assembled crowd as their worldview was turned on its head. Many people didn't want the Uchiha clan to be a bunch of traitors. However, the older civilians and shinobis couldn't deny the arrogance and greed that many Uchihas had possessed. Those traits, plus Sarutobi's reputation for honesty in his announcements, made it very likely that the Uchihas were traitors. Also, having the massacre being a village-approved operation would explain why all of the Uchihas except for Sasuke had been killed. With the crowd now subdued and depressed, Sarutobi moved on to the good news. He then gave an uplifting smile and announced, but there is good news for us all today. The people of Konoha have remained strong in the face of adversity like trees in an orchard. However, an orchard needs a farmer to tend the trees and make sure that they stay strong. The Hokage and Konoha are like the farmer in the orchard. It is time that I step down from my position as Hokage and let someone else tend to the village. My student Jiraiya has agreed to become our Godame Hokage. The crowd watched as Sarutobi took off his Kage robe and hat to place them on Jiraiya. Once the hat was on Jiraiya's head, Sarutobi bowed to his student in a subservient manner. With Sarutobi's bow, everyone in the crowd below bowed to their new leader. Some people weren't too thrilled with Jiraiya being the Hokage, but everyone showed Jiraiya the respect that his office deserved. After receiving the village's homage, Jiraiya looked out at his subjects and he spoke in an authoritative and wise voice that almost no one had expected him to possess. I thank you all for placing your trust in me, and I promise that I shall do the utmost in my power to ensure that Konoha returns to its previous level of prosperity. I will also do what I can to make sure that this stays a place that our children will be proud to be citizens of. No doubt many of you are still reeling from the shock of finding out about the Uchiha. To be honest, so was I when I found out about it. It is expected of a shinobi to deal with cloak and dagger missions when the need arises. However, one does not expect or want such missions to be needed within the village. Konoha is supposed to be a place of safety for us where the harsh realities of war and the evilness of man cannot penetrate. We must all work harder than ever now to keep that wish alive. Look around you to the men, women, and children all around you and see them as your family. It doesn't matter if the people next to you are in your clan or not, if they're shinobi or not, or even if they're people you like or hate. When the chips are down, these are the people you can count on. Remember this fact and take a good look at yourselves. Ask yourselves whether or not you are the type of person that you would want to help out. You may not like what you see. Hell, I don't like parts of myself that I see within me. But, asking these hard questions will help you become better people and help you work together as the village you are. Jiraiya's speech wasn't the kind of ascension speech that the villagers had been expecting. However, it was just the speech that they needed. The Oto invasion, plus the knowledge of the Uchiha clan's true nature, had broken down many things that the people of Konoha had accepted about their daily lives. The Gandame's speech served to reunify the village and prevent the recently cleared bad growth from regenerating in the population. Sakura was lying on her belly on her bed crying into her pillow. Why was Sasuke killed? She refused to believe that Sasuke could have betrayed Konoha. As his teammate, she knew him and knew that it was impossible for him to turn traitor. Sasuke was just so strong, cool, and he detested traitors. That was why he was so determined to stop whoever it was that he wanted to stop. Slowly, the self-delusion Sakura had built up in her mind about Sasuke started to crumble bit by bit. There's simply only so much that she could deny and delude to herself during her examination of Sasuke before it all collapsed around her. Slowly each encounter that Sakura had with Sasuke came to mind and, despite her wishes, revealed that he wasn't the prince in shining armor that she had built him up to be. In fact, Sasuke pretty much was a jerk. This revelation did not sit well with the pink-haired girl and threw her into an even greater depression. Sakura had always had an inferiority complex and her split personality could occasionally drive her into very mild amounts of depression. In the past, Sakura had been able to fight these mild depressions off because of Naruto's attention. But now, she didn't have Naruto's attentions and the fact that she had been in love with a traitor drove Sakura into a deep pit of self-loathing. With a spark of madness in her eyes, Sakura grabbed one of her kunai and slashed her wrists. The sharp pain from the kunai cuts felt wonderful to Sakura in her adult state. It was as if all of her pain, depression, and self-loathing were just draining away from her. A grin formed on Sakura's face as she lay back down on her bed and let everything just disappear. Sakura would have died if her mother hadn't been worried about her. Mrs. Haruno knew that her daughter would be upset over Sasuke's death. How could she not know about her daughter's massive crush and see the potential problems that his death would cause for Sasuke? For the most part, Mrs. Haruno was willing to let Sakura just stay up in her room and cry. It was the elder Haruno's hope that Sakura would have a good cry and then would be ready to talk everything through. Thanks to keeping her ear on Sakura, Mrs. Haruno heard the sickening sound of metal cutting through flesh and blood splattering. Her heart in her throat, Mrs. Haruno rushed up the stairs as fast as her legs could carry her and busted down Sakura's door. She froze for a second seeing her daughter lying on her bed bleeding to death. However, Mrs. Haruno's worry over Sakura's life caused her to leap over to the bed and start wrapping Sakura's wrists with the bed sheets. The elder Haruno then scooped her daughter up into her arms and started moving out the door and towards the hospital as fast as her legs could carry her. Damn it! Why did something like this have to happen on my first full day as Hokage? Jiraiya muttered to himself as he looked at the report in front of him. Inventory reports he could handle, mission requests wouldn't be a problem, petitions from this or that special interest group would be duly burned. But nothing had prepared Jiraiya for having to deal with one of his shinobis trying to kill themselves. In fact, Jiraiya didn't really expect to have to deal with this kind of problem due to the mental checks that the ninja force was supposed to undergo. Unfortunately, the doctor's report on Sakura Haruno's suicide attempt was on Jiraiya's desk, staring him in the face. Jiraiya quickly called out to his secretary, "Bring me Team Tenzu's mission reports and Tenzu's team analysis reports now." 5 minutes later, the secretary returned with the reports that Jiraiya had requested. The Gandame then started reading the reports trying to find any clue as to why Sakura attempted to commit suicide. Tenzu's report showed that Sakura had a crush on Sasuke and had been getting a little vibrant than she used to be, but otherwise she was a normal kunoichi. With a bit of disgust, Jiraiya slapped the reports down on his desk and started grumbling. Great, just great. Naruto was on a team with a useless fangirl who barely improved despite her instructor's attempts and who thought offing herself was a good idea when her Prince Charming turned out to be a slimeball. What did Naruto and Tenza do to deserve being stuck with their other two teammates? Maybe Team 7 is just unlucky. After all, just look at my Team 7, Minato's Team 7, and the latest Team 7. Maybe I should just retire the team name and have it so that future teams just skip 7 and go to 8. After blowing off some steam, Jiraiya thought about what he should do. His decision on Sakura was pretty easy to make. She would be put on medical leave for 6 months and would be kicked out of the ninja program if she didn't start to show massive psychological improvements. Konoha had no room or tolerance for an unstable ninja. Hopefully the shrinks would be able to get the poor girl's head back on straight. Tenzu was also pretty easy for Jiraiya to decide on. He'd simply offer Tenzu the chance to rejoin the ANBU or stay as a regular jonin. Either way, Tenzu would make himself useful to the village. True to form, Naruto was a problem for Jiraiya as he tried to figure out what to do with the boy. Part of Jiraiya wanted to simply take Naruto on as an apprentice. After all, he was the brat's godfather and should look out for him. However, things were still very volatile politically and bringing Naruto into the spotlight like that would cause a lot of problems for the boy. Yes, people probably knew that there was a connection between him and Naruto since Naruto could summon toads. But, Naruto's remaining naysayers wouldn't be riled up if it was out of sight, out of mind. No, for now the best thing to do for Naruto would be to put him on another genin team. There were other reasons for putting Naruto on a team besides keeping the heat off of him. Naruto needed to learn how to work in a team better and there were still some basic tricks that he needed to learn that could only really be taught by experience on a team. Now the only remaining question for Jiraiya on this issue was which team to put Naruto on. Luckily, Jiraiya remembered his approving Tenten's advancement to Chunin earlier that morning. He quickly pulled out her file and saw that there was an opening on Team 9 due to the unfortunate death of Niji Hyuga during the preliminary round of the Chunin exams. Jiraiya then pulled out the files on the rest of Team 9 and made his decision. He called his secretary and told her to go summon Tenzu and Guy to his office. The two jonins arrived a few minutes later. Both Guy and Tenzu were wondering why they had been summoned by the Gondame. They entered the Hokage's office and saw Jiraiya with a serious look on his face. Jiraiya calmly said, "I'm sure you two are wondering why I've summoned you here. Tenzu, I've got some bad news for you. Last night Mrs. Haruno rushed Sakura to the hospital in order to be treated for attempted suicide. Don't worry, Sakura made it. However, self-destructive ninjas cannot be allowed on the force and she has been put on mental leave for the next 6 months. This leaves me with a bit of a quandary. Team 7 and Team 9 are missing members and can't be let out of the village because of this. Thanks to a bitter amount of luck, both teams have enough genin and shunin among them to be made into a new team. Congratulations Guy, Tenten got promoted. The problem that I have is which one of you should be the Jonin sensei? Guy, you've shown very good leadership skills and you were able to turn Lee into a powerhouse when most would have written the boy off. However, you are mostly limited to taijutsu and could fulfill a vital role of teaching taijutsu at the academy so that its standards are up. Tenzu, you are extremely versatile in your abilities and have shown that you do well with students who want to learn. However, you would also be useful back in the ANBU. I don't hold Sasuke or Sakura against you since you did everything humanly possible to help them as their teacher. Now, I want your guys' opinions on which one of you should be the Jonin sensei of the new Team 9. Chapter 9. Itachi looked at the note in his hand and scowled. Why did Sasuke do it? Why did his little brother have to be so completely stupid? This wasn't how things were supposed to be. Sasuke was supposed to be the redemption of the Uchiha clan so that its ugliness could be washed away. Instead, his foolish brother had become the damnation of the clan, bringing all the dirty secrets that Itachi had hoped to bury with his own death to light. Out of frustration, Itachi tore up the note that Sarutobi had sent him pleading for him to return to Konoha and let the pieces fly in the wind. For the first time since that fateful day, Itachi was lost in the world without an idea of what he should do. Part of Itachi thought about returning to Konoha. However, the thought of returning to Konoha and the shame of his clan there was just too much for the last known Uchiha.
Itachi thought about just slipping away into obscurity and settling down as a farmer or tradesman to raise a family.
That idea was so alluring and tempting to the self-tormented young man. But, Itachi didn't feel that he deserved such a wonderful life after what he had done. Who in their right mind would ever think that a kinslayer deserved such a wonderful life? About the only thing that Itachi was certain of was the fact that he couldn't stay in the Akatsuki anymore. Once the other members heard what was announced, they would grow suspicious of him. Suspicion in a group of mission ninjas was never a good thing for the one that the others were suspicious of. It tended to result in the suspected ninja dying. Questions would be raised about his loyalty to the group when they found out that he had killed his family under orders. Itachi figured that Madara wouldn't stick his neck out for him and that he was on his own for this situation. Well, that suited Itachi just fine. He had made it this far on his own, he would make it the rest of the way on his own. Chances that he would be able to make it to the next year were very slim. Itachi didn't like the idea of being a lucky kill of some bounty hunter or getting knifed in the back by the Akatsuki. Those two possibilities did not sit well with Itachi. If he was going to die, he'd die on his own terms. The missing Uchiha ninja silently got up and calmly headed into aim. No one down below paid him any heed. After all, he was just ninja to the ordinary citizens, and the Rain ninjas knew that the Akatsuki were servants of pain. As far as anyone knew, he was just a regular old servant of pain. Despite the severity of the situation, Itachi couldn't help but smirk. No one would expect what was coming on this, his last mission. Slowly, Itachi made his way to the center of aim to where Pain's tower was located. No one was allowed in the tower except for Konan, Madara, and Pain's various bodies. This was actually good for Itachi because the fear of Pain kept guards from being stationed high up on the tower. The Uchiha ninja quickly used a jutsu on his sword that he had copied off of a Kiri ninja and cut an entrance into the wall. Itachi quickly flew into the entrance and raced down the hallways. He was now racing to locate the real Pain before his betrayal could be discovered. Fortunately, Itachi's luck with betrayal held up this time around as he entered the central chamber where Nagato's body stood in its crawler. Nagato's body was famished and had dozens of chakra rods piercing it. In a way, it was almost pathetic. This near corpse that was only sustained by lost medical technology somehow managed to convince the people below that it was some type of god. Nagato turned his head to look at Itachi and hoarsely said, "You. How dare you enter this place? This is a forbidden area." Itachi drew his blade and rushed at the frightened Nagato. Becoming Pain had given Nagato a major weakness, himself. In order to gain the paths, Nagato had to turn himself into a living chakra transmitter. This allowed him to wield immeasurable power through the paths, but left the real him as a target. That's why Nagato was hidden away and only Pain was showed to the outside world. Like any true ninja, Itachi took advantage of this weakness and cut off Nagato's head. Throughout the village, the various bodies of Pain suddenly collapsed because of Nagato's death. Now on the clock, Itachi burned his way out of the tower and started attacking as many AIM ninjas as he could. Akatsuki needed the minor ninja village as a base of operations and as a place to launder its money. Any damage the village took would only hurt Akatsuki. Moreover, it would draw the other members of the organization out where Itachi could take them down. Sasori was the first member of Akatsuki to appear against Itachi. The sight of the puppet master gave the rogue ninja a small pleasure. Itachi grinned at Sasori and called out, "Amaterasu!" The black fires of the Uchiha clan's ultimate fire jutsu suddenly started burning Sasori's armor. Itachi kept pouring his chakra into the flames for a few more seconds before he let the fires burn on their own. Sasori had coated his puppet armor in flame-resistant paint, but that was only against normal fire jutsus. Itachi had specifically chosen to use the Amaterasu against the puppeteer because it could burn through the flame-resistant paint. That made the extra chakra cost worth it. Even as Sasori burned to death, there was no rest for Itachi. Deidara had taken to the skies and was soaring over Itachi. The former IWA ninja created 2 clay missiles and launched them towards the Rouge Akatsuki operative.
Over the explosions, Deidara roared, "Art is a bang! Remember that traitor!"
Deidara then started circling overhead to try and spot his target.
Itachi had survived the explosions by ducking into a now-destroyed shop.
Survival was costly for Itachi because a wooden splinter about a foot long and 2 inches wide was now lodged in his right shoulder.
The splinter rendered Itachi's right arm useless and thus stripped him of most of his jutsus.
Suddenly, Itachi heard Deidara's mocking voice chant out in the sky, "There once was a little traitor named Itachi who killed his family. He thought that he could kill the Akatsuki. Oops, too bad, he failed and died with a bang." Itachi heard the faint fluttering sound of Deidara's missiles and quickly rolled out of the store. That explosion kicked up Itachi's feet as he rolled, forcing him to do a handstand with his left hand and get in a crouching position in the middle of the street. Itachi looked up at the smirking Deidara and he knew that he had only one shot at taking that artistic fool down. This might be a suicide run, but there was no way that Itachi would ever allow Deidara the chance to claim victory over him. Focusing with all his might, Itachi cried out, "Susanoo!" Deidara nearly choked when he saw the spectral warrior appear surrounding Itachi. Who knew that the oh-so-serious Uchiha punk had something like this hidden up his sleeve? It just wasn't artistic to keep a masterpiece hidden from other artists. Deidara quickly spotted Susanoo's sword moving and tried to get out of the way. However, he wasn't able to turn fast enough and his ride was sliced by the sword, causing it to explode. Itachi weakly coughed at the sight of Deidara's death. Killing THRE Akatsuki agents in one fight was pretty good for a single person and would set the Akatsuki back years. Suddenly, Itachi felt a sword run through him and looked down to see a bloody blade jutting out of his chest. He then heard Madara whisper in his ear, "Don't think that you're going to die like this on me, Itachi. You've caused me quite a lot of trouble today, and I do mean quite a lot of trouble. I've deliberately missed your vital organs so that I can prolong your death as much as possible. You will wish that you had never heard of the Akatsuki before I kill you later today." The sun was peeking through the windows of Naruto's apartment, revealing Temari sleeping in a futon set up in the living room. Temari was elegant and graceful in many things that she did, but sleeping was not one of those things. Her limbs were spread out on the futon, her hair was a mess, the blanket was all scrunched up, and there was a little bit of drool running down from the left side of her mouth. All in all, this was a typical morning scene where Temari was concerned. Ever so slowly, the sun's rays started to coax Temari up. At first she tried to ignore the sun and stay asleep. However, Naruto turned the shower on a minute later and the sound was too much for Temari to ignore. The Suna Kunoichi sat up and let out a half-asleep groan. Her brain then went on autopilot and dragged her body into the kitchen. Once there, Temari grabbed a highly caffeinated soda out of the fridge and guzzled it down. The caffeine from the soda kick-started Temari's system and caused her to fully wake up. Now truly awake, Temari chucked her used soda can into the trash. She then headed into the living room and proceeded to put away her futon. Naruto was out of the bathroom by the time Temari had cleaned everything up. This allowed the Suna Kunoichi to get in her shower while Naruto prepared breakfast for the two of them. While Naruto trusted Temari to cook for the both of them, he wasn't about to let her cook again since she wasn't that good. Temari finished getting ready for the day just as Naruto was putting breakfast on the table. Breakfast was eaten in silence. The duo was still friends, but there was still some unease between them. Naruto had forgiven Temari knocking him out before the invasion and put it behind him. However, he was still unsure what he should do about Temari's proclamation of love. This hesitation on Naruto's part left Temari in an emotional limbo. What were the two of them? Were they just friends or were they something more? Neither Naruto nor Temari tried to bring that topic up after Temari's proclamation 3 days ago. This lack of communication just left things even more uncertain between them. As breakfast was winding down, Temari looked up at Naruto and asked, "Naruto? What is the plan for today? Where do you want us to meet up?" Even though the terms of Temari's parole were generous, she still had to check in with Naruto throughout the day to make sure that she wasn't trying to escape. This of course meant that she had to fit whatever she was going to do for the day in with Naruto's schedule. Naruto looked at Temari and replied, "Well, I'm going to see Jiraiya about my lack of a team. After that, I can't really say what I'm going to do. Let's arrange to meet at that barbecue place for lunch at noon. Then, we can arrange for another meeting later in the afternoon." Temari nodded her head and said, "Okay, the barbecue place at noon. If you need to find me, I'll be in the civilian library on Senju Street. At least there I can get some peace and quiet without too many stares from the civilians." Naruto winced slightly at the mention of the hostility directed to Temari. None of the civilians had attacked Temari, but a lot of sneers and hostile glares had been sent her way. It was to be expected that something like that would happen since many civilians were angry over the attack and Temari was the closest target. Still, that didn't mean that Temari or Naruto liked the civilians' actions. The room grew quiet for a few minutes before the duo said their goodbyes. Naruto left a few clones to take care of the dishes and then headed off for the Hokage Tower. As Naruto walked down the street, he was given many curt nods of respect and even a few smiles by the villagers. Word had gotten around the village about Naruto's actions during the invasion. Many of those still on the council didn't like Naruto, but the average villager was starting to warm up to him. Once Naruto got to the Hokage Tower, he quickly headed towards Jiraiya's office. The secretary knew that Naruto had an appointment and simply waved him on through. Naruto quickly spotted Jiraiya sitting behind the desk and two others standing near the desk. Judging from their age, Naruto figured that these were his new teammates. Jiraiya quickly started talking after Naruto arrived. "Good morning, Naruto. These are your new teammates, Tenten and Lee. Tenten has been newly promoted to Chunin, so she's on the team to polish off her skills before going on her own and to gain command experience. She is in charge of the team whenever your Jonin teacher is not around." Lee quickly piped up, "Yash. Welcome Naruto to the youthful team guy. It is an honor to have you on our youth." Lee wasn't able to continue his sentence because Jiraiya chucked an Ika paperweight at Lee's head. Everyone then heard Jiraiya mutter under his breath, "How did this kid pass his psych evaluation?" Jiraiya then took on a more dignified look and said, "Guy Mato will not be your Jonin instructor. He has been reassigned to the Ninja Academy to become the main Taijutsu teacher. If he is even halfway as successful with those kids as he was with Lee, our graduating genin will truly be formidable to the enemy. Tenzo from the now defunct Team 7 will become your instructor. Naruto, you know what Tenzo can teach you. Tenzo can increase your ninjutsu so that you have less weak points. Lee, Tenzo can teach you about traps and other ways around your unique circumstances." The reactions of the new Team Tenzo team members were interesting. Naruto had a big grin on his face, Tenten seemed thoughtful, and Lee was pouting. Tenten then looked at Jiraiya and said, "Hokage sir, where is our team's instructor?" Jiraiya gave Tenten a small smile and replied, "Good thinking girl. Unfortunately, there was a critical mission that needed Tenzo's skills that you three aren't ready for yet. That means, of course, that you are in charge of the team for now Tenten. What your team does today is up to you. The three of you can train, take a D-rank mission, or just blow the whole day off. It's all up to you. Just remember to consult with Naruto when you're planning your team's day. He has to routinely check in with Temari Sabaku to make sure that she is honoring her parole. Now you three get out of my office so that I can work." Tenten frowned a bit at the mention of Temari since it reminded her of Gaara and Niji's death. However, Tenten reminded herself that Temari wasn't Gaara and simply led Team Tenzo out of the office. Once outside, Tenten turned around to face her teammates and said, "Alright you two. I want to know how good both of you are and to go through some basic teamwork skills. We're headed for Training Ground 19. Naruto, I want to know the exact times that you're supposed to be meeting Temari." Seeing the look on Tenten's face, Naruto quickly complied as the team headed for Training Ground 19. Konoha, despite what people outside and inside might claim, was well aware of the dangers of that existed in the ninja world. The Leaf simply didn't broadcast its understanding of the real world. This actually gave them a measure of security since everyone else thought that they were a bunch of naive fools. One example of where this played into Konoha's hands was a small holding facility that was run by ANBU for housing people too dangerous to be held in the village proper. Tenzu was a bit surprised to find himself temporarily back in the ANBU working as guard in this facility. However, he was the only one with the skills necessary to look after a very dangerous prisoner. Gaara was confined to a large cage in the center of the room. On the floor of the cage was a large seal designed to drain away a portion of Gaara's chakra. All of the boy's sand had been thoroughly scrubbed off of him and disposed of by dumping it into a river. As a Jinchuriki, Gaara represented a major security problem. Killing him was out of the question because that would release the demon locked away inside him. That's why in the past, people fighting Jinchuriki aimed to disable, not kill. Tenzu was here because he was the best person to handle an enraged Jinchuriki if Gaara got loose. His Mokuton, while not as effective as the Shodais without the Senju gem, would be useful in containing Gaara. Gaara was currently staring at Tenzu with hatred in his eyes. For most of his life, Gaara had been devoted to proving his existence by killing anyone who fought him, and here he lay defeated. What was the purpose of his existence? Gaara looked on in rage at Tenzu, who represented the loss of purpose. Why couldn't the Konoha ninjas have just killed him instead of putting him in this terrible limbo? Looking at Gaara pulled at Tenzu's heart. The boy reminded him in a lot of ways of Naruto. Both were Jinchuriki and both, at least what was gleaned from other Suna ninjas, were disliked and feared by many in their home villages. However, where Gaara had given in to despair and hatred, Naruto had overcome it. Eventually, Tenzu decided to break expected protocol and spoke to Gaara. It's pathetic, really. You have so much potential and yet, you're wasting it in this loathing of yours. Gaara's face took on a more enraged look and he shot back, what do you know? My existence has been taken from me. What is a monster without the ability to kill? Tenzu frowned and calmly replied, is that all you think of yourself as? Having a demon sealed within you does not make you a monster. If you are a monster, it is because you've turned yourself into one. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I have a friend who has exactly the same burden that you do, and he is the farthest thing from a monster that any shinobi could possibly be. My friend has had a hard life and yet he's never given in to the temptation to become a monster. These words cut Gaara to his core. All his life, he had thought that he was alone and that no one else knew what it was like dealing with a demon every day. Gaara wanted to deny Tenzu's words and retreat into his familiar mindset. However, being locked up in the cage prevented him from retreating, and he had no way to kill Tenzu to silence the painful words. Slowly, these words moved through the mental cracks to Gaara's heart and forced him to see what he had turned himself into, a monster. Shikako sensed that its hold on its host was diminishing and tried to counteract this. The sand demon sent every image of Gaara being isolated that had ever happened and intermixed this with feelings of pleasure whenever he killed someone. Gaara grabbed his head trying to deal with the massive influx of images. A brown aura started to form around Gaara, putting Tenzu on the defensive. Just as Tenzu was about to pull out Sealing Ward, Gaara painfully screamed out, "Get out of my mind! I am not a demon anymore." The demonic chakra emanating from Gaara suddenly exploded outward. This energy then shot up, folded in on itself, and then returned to Gaara. Tenzu watched as the returning energy slashed the kanji for redeemed above Gaara's right eye. Once the last bit of demonic chakra had returned, Gaara fell to the ground unconscious. Hinata was walking down the streets when she saw something that completely shocked her. Naruto was sitting at Ichikaru's having ramen with Temari. Now, Naruto having ramen was not an uncommon thing and was why she usually walked this way. However, Naruto always ate his lunch by himself. Okay, so Ayame and Mr. Ichikaru would occasionally chat with Naruto for a bit, but the majority of the time Naruto ate by himself. How could this have happened? Naruto hadn't shown the slightest interest in any girl except for Sakura, and that was in the past. Hinata had been carefully watching Naruto, hoping to build up the courage to ask him out. In fact, that had been why she was here today. Naruto hadn't been pursuing anyone and he had to deal with the disaster that had happened to his team.
It had been Hinata's hope to cheer Naruto up and claim his heart that way.
That plan was obviously not going to work considering how friendly Naruto was acting with his guest. Suddenly, Hinata heard two nearby women talking amongst themselves.
"Can you believe it?" one said to the other.
"That Suna Kunoichi is allowed to roam free throughout the village.
Why the hell isn't she locked up with all the other sand whores?"
The other villager quickly replied, "I heard that it was some favor called in by the daimyo."
"How unfair is that? Just because she's the former Kazekage's daughter she gets to go free." Hinata felt an unexpected rage start to build up within her. Why was Asuna Kunoichi hanging around with Naruto? It wasn't fair and it wasn't right. Naruto should be hanging out with her. Or at least, he should be hanging out with someone from Konoha. It wasn't right for him to be talking with a traitorous enemy. Unable to stand the sight of Naruto with Temari anymore, Hinata whipped around and started running away as fast as her legs could carry her. The Hyuga heiress ran as fast as her legs could carry her until she reached an abandoned training ground. Once in the training ground, Hinata threw her head back and let loose a scream of anguish and rage. Hinata had long been a very kind and gentle woman, but on that day her heart grew to hate Suna with every fiber of her being. That accursed village seemed to Hinata to solely exist to ruin her life. First, Asuna ninja kills her cousin Niji, then that village attacks the village, and now Asuna Kunoichi steals time with Naruto. Hinata's eyes hardened as her heart hardened against the sand village. Jiraiya was working in his office trying to sort out some necessary paperwork when he felt the minute tug of someone wanting to talk to him. Putting down his pen, Jiraiya got up and calmly summoned the toad in question. The smoke cleared to reveal Pa standing on the floor with a solemn face. Jiraiya gave a respectful nod and said, "Okay Pa. Why did you want to talk to me?" Pa looked up at his perverted student and said, "I just received word from the crow summons. It appears that their summoner Itachi has died." Before he died however, Itachi was able to take out 3 other members of the Akatsuki. The crows don't know which 3 Itachi took out, they only know for sure that he took out an extremely power member as one of his 3 kills. Jiraiya bowed his head when he heard about Itachi passing. As a person, Itachi's actions had repulsed Jiraiya. However, Jiraiya could understand and grimily admire Itachi's actions as a ninja. Itachi had put his own hopes and dreams, even his own family, aside for the good of the village. In a quiet voice Jiraiya asked, "Were the crows able to retrieve Itachi's body?" Pa shook his head and replied, "Sadly they couldn't recall Itachi's body. His executioner apparently had a seal in place that prevented Itachi's body from being summoned before the connection broke down." With a sigh, Jiraiya replied, "I guess we'll just have to do an absentee funeral then. It's such a shame." Sarutobi had been hoping that Itachi could return to Konoha or at least retire quietly to the countryside. The punk really got screwed over by the village and his clan. He deserved the right to enjoy life. Still, thank you for informing me of this, Pa. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Pa nodded his head and said, "You bet I do, little Jiraiya. Ma and I are interested in young Naruto. The boy proved to be extremely capable during the invasion. Although Ma still has her reservations, we both want Naruto to come to the mountain for training." Jiraiya stared dumbly at Pa and practically stuttered out, "You want Naruto to come to the mountain? He's too young. Sage training isn't allowed to anyone younger than 14. Moments after saying that, Jiraiya's head was reintroduced to its old friend Pa's training cane. After some cranial landscape changes, Pa put away his training cane and hopped onto Jiraiya's badly bruised head. The disgruntled toad elder sage grumpily said, "Frogs leap before they look, toads look before they leap. Didn't I specifically teach you that, little Jiraiya?" Unfortunately, the Hokage couldn't answer his teacher due to being unconscious. Once Jiraiya was conscious again, Pa started to explain what he wanted. "Naruto has a great deal of potential, more than I've personally seen in any human before. I want to see that potential bloom. Normally, I would wait a few years before inviting Naruto to my Obokuzen. However, Itachi's actions have put me on high alert since there is no way to know what Akatsuki will do now. They might delay their plans to recruit new members, or they could speed up their timetable to not appear weak. If Akatsuki speeds up their timetable, Naruto is in grave danger. He's not as powerful as some of the older Jinchurikis, and his actions during the invasion have put him on the public radar. Naruto represents the best possible target for the Akatsuki if they do decide to show that they are still a force to be reckoned with. Bringing Naruto to Myobokuzen allows him to be trained in some of the lesser Jutsus and gets him off of the public radar. Jiraiya had to admit that Pa had a good point. However, the situation was much more complicated. Jiraiya looked at his teacher and said, "I have to agree with you, Pa, but I can't have Naruto disappear. It would look suspicious if he just vanished. His new team would wonder what happened to him. Besides, it's an open secret in the village that Naruto is Temari's parole officer. There would be trouble if Naruto disappeared and she stayed around. I can't just lock Temari up again until the peace treaty, since the fire daimyo specifically asked for her to be released." Pa closed his eyes and thought about the situation for a few moments. The elder toad then smirked and said, "If Temari's presence draws too much attention to Naruto, she'll just have to vanish with him. Arrange a scene involving some angry civilians attacking Temari over the losses from the invasion. She won't be hurt, of course, but for her safety she and her guard needed to move her parole area to an undisclosed location where she will be treated well. Of course, we'll have to bring both Temari and Naruto in on this little play to ensure that it goes smoothly." A small grin appeared on Jiraiya's face as he listened to his teacher's advice. It was such a simple plan, and the best part was no one would question it. There only seemed to be one flaw to the plan from what Jiraiya could see. This caused him to speak up. "What about Ma, Pa?" Pa shrugged his shoulders and said, "Ma would appreciate some female company. I'll just need to run this by her first before bringing Temari and Naruto back to the mountain."